Hello everyone, welcome to Ad Signals, and today's video I'm going to be talking about Andromeda and what you don't need to fear and what you need to consider. Meta's Andromeda simplified. So here I'm going to break down, and actually I've been working with clients for the last probably 3, 4, 5 months on these kind of strategies, and this little kind of green thing here is actually a client scribble that I put together, and there's other ones as well, but I wanted to put something together for you guys, not based on just reading what's happening and just trying to do small experiments. I wanted to get some significant data before I'd shared it with you, because I've seen a lot of people jump into writing blog posts and they're just basically regurgitating what's on Meta's own blog posts. A lot of people are creating YouTube videos and they're instilling fear that Andromeda is going to absolutely change the way you run ads. I can tell you right now, it doesn't have to. And what I mean by that is, I think a lot of you that are watching this video, you're probably doing a lot of the good things already. So this, I don't think for you lot, it's going to be a significant change to what you're doing right now. But there are certain things that you're going to have to consider as time goes on, because like it's here to stay. The Andromeda algorithm process, the whole infrastructure is designed to allow Meta to make more money. That's the bottom line. Forget you and me, forget the user and everything like that. The bottom line, Facebook are looking at this and saying, how do we make more money out of the platform? Their year-on-year revenues continue to climb. There's only so many placements that they can generate. There's only so much they can increase the CPM, how much they charge you, before things start to break. So, like one of the things about this is when you look at the old way versus the new way. The old way, we used to talk heavily about the pixel, and I still do talk heavily about the pixel, because the pixel is what you install on your website and it gives Facebook the visibility of what's actually happening. So if someone clicks, if someone exits, if they progress through your funnel, Facebook are tracking all of that and they're making sense of it as well. And also, and I'll touch on, and I'll cover this in more detail shortly, when you have the pixel on your website, Facebook can read all the content as well. It's really important to remember that, because your creative signals, part of it is related to your funnel and your landing page. It's really, really important to get that working as well. So the old way was heavy reliance on pixel data. The new way is, what Meta is calling the creative signals. The creative signals are broken down by avatar and then by their journey with your product or service, and then also the type of ad they're reacting to. And I'll cover what that means later on as well. But essentially, I guess we've got these kind of pixel signals, we've got creative signals, and all of that is being merged together. And Andromeda, and I'll show you the illustration, they're trying to predict what's going to actually work a lot more than they have before. So I'm going to show you this one here at first. Now, it looks a bit complicated. It really isn't. I'll explain what this model actually means. So on the left-hand side, you've got this user requests section. So there's someone on their mobile, someone who's on their desktop. User request just basically means they're on the news feed or they're in on Instagram and they're just waiting for copy, sort of waiting for content. The ads corpus are all the ads that exist that could be served to that user. There's a new process, and it's this thing here. I don't know if I can scribble on it. Let me grab my little drawing tool. So this thing here is a huge change that Meta have introduced. So this hierarchical ad index, what they're trying to do is, if you look at this, so we pick these dark colored circles here. They're all ads. They're all different styles of ads. Meta links all of those and say, they're really similar ads. Let's group those into this pot here. Then these three ads here are very similar. Let's link those here. So what ends up happening is, and this is the crux, I think the main part of what Meta is trying to produce, is they want you to provide as many variants of ads as possible for as many avatars as you can, and let them do the sorting. Now, this kind of plays against the way I've been running ads, and to this day, I still run ads. And the reason is I'm yet to see this work consistently. At some point in the next probably 12 months, Meta will have enough data, and at some point it will work a lot better. But essentially, what they're doing is they're grouping ads based on a number of creative signals, audience signals, and things like that. Now, this part at the bottom, and I don't know if you've seen it, but there's been talk of NVIDIA, which is a chip company, a kind of microprocessor chip company, and then Meta and their own infrastructure. Now, this thing here needs a lot of computing time. There's a lot of analysis and stuff that goes in. Now, if you imagine a user's here on Instagram and all they want is content. In the background, Meta says, what ads can we serve? How can we find the right ad for the user? How can we decide which one to deliver right now? And then how do we actually deliver those ads back to the user? So simple step-by-step process, but the amount of thinking, computer thinking that goes into it is massive. Now, in order for Meta to make this work, it needed two things. It needed AI and it needed NVIDIA's chips because it needs the logic, it needs the kind of thinking power, and it also needs the processing power of actually the machines to be able to do it. Those things have happened over the last few years thanks to ChatGPT's explosion, which has actually helped NVIDIA as a company take off. But anyway, that's a side thing. What you need to know here is this part in the middle, because when Meta's looking at this thing here called the hierarchical ad index, that's where they are trying to get you, and I'm going to write you here. They want you to focus on this part here. Because if you just, I don't want to use the word dump. I need a better word than dump. But if you're going to dump a bunch of ads in, I would hope you've done some research first. But let's just say you put lots of ads into one ad set. So here there's what, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. There's 15 ads here. So if you drop that into an ad set, and we have a campaign, we have an ad set, and then we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 ads. That's what Meta's looking for. I'll put that a bit cleaner at the bottom. So 1 times campaign, 1 times ad set, as an example, 15 times ads. So Meta's goal is, hey, look at Meta advertising. It's so simple. You just need 1 campaign, decide, do you want sales, do you want leads, do you want video views, all that kind of stuff. And all you need is 1 ad set. And within that ad set, you just put in your location, put in your age, gender, and that's it. Look how easy it is to run ads on Meta. And then all you do is just give us 15 ads. And on top of that, AI will help you build the ads as well. So in Meta's world, running ads is so simple. And this is the thing that I find when I speak to Meta reps, they also believe in this as well. So in their mind, they're like, just run 1 campaign, do 1 ad set, and just drop 15 ads in there, and then they will tell you this. Just put a budget in of about $500 and let it run, and it'll be amazing. Here's the reality. For most small business owners, just dropping $500 a day in a single ad set, that's scary. Because first of all, like you don't know if these ads are going to work, right? So you're dropping $500 in, you could be thousands of dollars down before you start to see any result, before you start to see this algorithm and stuff doing its thing. That's the massive flaw in this, that it needs data and it needs ad spend. Now, when Meta run these kind of things, they often go to their kind of premium clients, and we're talking about people that spend millions a year with Meta, if not more, like tens of millions with Meta. Spending $500 a day on a test for Meta is absolutely pocket change for them. So then they'll come back with these results and say, it worked amazing. We started off at $500 a day, did 1 campaign, 1 ad set, 15 ads. I let it run for 3 days, and the results were mind-blowing and all that kind of stuff. There's a few problems with that. Number one is not everyone has the ability to spend $500 a day without worrying about what happens. And number two, unfortunately, by going to these big brands, they're discounting the fact that they are brands. So if the brand just ends up running 15 ads, first of all, their pixel data is very strong. And secondly, they've been running ads for a long time anyway. So their customers are expecting something and they're going to react. And there's so many variables and stuff. And I've spoken to Facebook about this. You cannot run a program like this to premium advertisers and then present it to small businesses. Because by the way, the 9.9 plus million advertisers that don't really know what they're doing. They are the small advertisers. They're the ones that are they just launched their e-com store, or they've just started freelancing, or they've found a local client and they just want to run ads and things like that, or they've got a book and they want to sell it online. They're the people that are struggling. Now, if I was to go to them and say, hey, this is how you run Andromeda, just do one campaign, one ad set, just do some broad targeting, just drop 15 ads in there, some videos, some images, some UGC, and just put your budget at $500 a day and give it 3-4 days and just see what happens. I'm going to get a lot of negative reviews and say, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's cost us thousands. We didn't make any money. It's been a disaster. But when Facebook say it, you say it looks really good. We should probably try it because Facebook said it. No, guard yourself against this stuff. And this happens with every release of Facebook stuff, CBO, Advantage Plus, everything they drop in, take it with a pinch of salt until you've seen enough evidence that it's working, and then start doing a small test yourself. So then you look at this and say, how do I make it work for me? And that's something which I want to make sure by the end of this, you have a game plan to make this work as well. Now, the other part of this is this model called Meta's generative ads. So they call it GEM, GEM, should be GAM, but that doesn't sound as cool. And by the way, if you've got questions, just kind of post them below and I'll answer those at the end as well. Meta's generative ads model, this builds on top of this diagram here. This is a layer below this. Now, I'm not going to go into the detail here, not just because I don't want to confuse you, but I also don't fully understand the detail here. So I'm not going to explain something I don't understand. What I do understand is what they're trying to do is understand the user a lot better. And the bottom line for you is to understand, if this model is to work, Facebook need to know your intent as a user. Like I share this example, and I've shared this for many years. If you take an example of any given user, throughout their day, they might use different devices and they might have different intent during the day. So I'll give you an example. And I think this was a story that Facebook actually shared with us many years ago when I went to one of their events. And they said, for example, let's say you're targeting someone with clothing and it's a female clothing brand. So your ideal prospect, as an example, she wakes up in the morning, 6:30, she checks her phone, she's on Instagram first thing in the morning, and then 5-10 minutes later, she's out of bed, she's getting ready and things like that. In that 10 minutes she was checking Instagram, she's not going to click any links, she's not going to buy anything, but she's been browsing, and if your ad appears, she may have taken notice. Few hours go, she's ready, she's now leaving, or maybe not a few hours, but an hour or so goes, she now leaves for work. Now, let's say she commutes and she takes the train and the bus. While she's on that commute, she's also back on Instagram, checking in what her friends are doing, liking friends' posts and other brands she follows and things like that. She might see an ad and she might click, but because she's on her way on to work, she's very unlikely to buy. Then let's say she's at work, phone's off, lunchtime comes around, but this time she's on her desktop and she's on Facebook and checking in on what's happening there. She sees a nice ad and maybe she sees your ad. And the ad is this summer outfit and she thinks it looks good. She clicks it, has a browse on the product page and makes a note of it. And then actually maybe she does some configuration, clicks the add to cart and says, I'll come back later and have a think about that product. Later comes 5-6 o'clock in the evening, going back home again on the mobile, browsing Instagram, not necessarily clicking or doing anything, gets back home, does her evening routine, and then maybe 9 o'clock at night, she's back on Facebook and checking in, and then she sees your retargeting ad. And that retargeting ad has a 15% offer. And I really did like that thing that I added to cart earlier. She clicks the 15% offer, finds the product again, because by the way, she added to cart on desktop, but on mobile, the data is not there. She finds the product, checks out, and buys. Now, throughout all of that, Facebook is collecting all this data. So when you look at this data here, this is exactly what they're explaining on the right-hand side. So when a user is taking certain actions, Facebook is collecting all of that data. For example, if they're clicking on Facebook, clicking on Instagram, or actually converting, or all the things in between that they can do, they can like and comment, they can view a video. There's so many actions that go into it. What Facebook's trying to do is to predict. And it's a massive prediction model. This is the thing about it. Prediction is not factual. So if someone knows, if Meta knows this user is likely to do these actions, It's a prediction model. At the end of the day, even if it's the most superpowered AI in the world, it's still a prediction because let's say, for example, she has to work through lunch on the following day. She's not online. So your prediction failed because you assume that she was going to do a certain action. So Meta's building all that in so that when it can figure out the hierarchical model, it knows that the ad number one should be this, ad number two should be this, ad number three should be this, ad number four. You've done ad one and two, you've seen that already. Now we're going to serve ad number three. So it's starting to build that picture. In theory, this could be really amazing because it's building up that knowledge of cross device behavior and the actions that a user's taking. So in theory, if all you do is just drop a number of UGC ads, you drop some testimonials, you drop some carousel ads, you drop some videos and images, and you drop all of those into a single ad set, then in theory, Meta will not just decide, what to serve at a particular time. It'll decide on the sequence as well. So it'll say, for example, most users react better to a video first, then they react better to a static image, then they react better to a video again. It will figure out that path without you having to think about it. So that's the big goal of what they're trying to build. And this complex looking thing here is essentially that prediction model. So hopefully that makes sense in terms of how Andromeda is developing. Now, one thing I will say is, and I want to explain some of the smaller parts of this as well. Now, one thing it does is to filter weak creatives before the auction. So I mentioned this word here, predictive. What it's trying to also do is to filter out ads it doesn't think will work. This is really important because when you think about your test strategy, if you just follow this path here, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, if you want to test this out, this says just drop 15 ads in and let Meta decide which ads are going to work or not. So essentially, what ends up happening is you have to absolutely trust the algorithm. What that means is if you drop those 15 ads in and some ads get very little traffic or no traffic, and some ads get more spend and the others don't, rather than you saying, I'm going to pull some and try and force traffic here, you are supposed to absolutely leave it alone because what Meta's doing is saying, we've filtered out the ads that we don't think will work. It's this prediction model. So if you've dropped those 15 ads in, it might look at that and say, actually, based on experience of these kinds of avatars that you're after and these audiences, these ads probably won't work. So we're not going to serve it. So this is the thing about it. And that's why Meta will tell you don't touch it because you're not supposed to touch it because it starts screwing with the algorithm. So if you're the type of person like me that wants control, that wants to be able to influence which ads get tested to get the proper data and let the auction decide, then this model is going to be very frustrating because in order to make it work, you're going to have to take a step back and actually let Facebook get on with it. It's the same problem that happened when Meta created CBO. You were supposed to step back and let the campaign budgets decide where all the money goes, and you're not supposed to touch it. Most users didn't do that, and then they complained that CBO didn't work. So if you're trying to use the strict Andromeda model, this is what you're supposed to do. It doesn't mean you can't have more than one ad set. You can absolutely have 2, 3 ad sets, but in there, you're just meant to drop your ads in and don't touch. So Meta starts to self-optimize. So if you can do that, then maybe the Andromeda update is for you. It matches people and creatives at an individual level. So this is really important because where I described here, it's starting to deliver these ads. This is one user request, and then these are ad candidates for that one user. So your 15 ads, for example, I'm just going to have to draw the curtain slightly because the sun has surprisingly decided to come out. If you're dropping those 15 ads in, those 15 ads are sorted for every individual user that comes through to Meta's system. So those ads, as you can see from the different coloring, just to denote that they're different ads, are served in different ways. So what they do is firstly group them based on the types of ads that you've got. Then they start to use this model to decide which kind of ads are more likely to work, and then they deliver them. So let's say, for example, this gray one is ad 1, that one's ad 2, that's ad 3, and that's ad 4. Then they're sequencing it on a per user basis. And this is why you're not supposed to touch the ad sets, because it's self-configuring in the way that when the individual user sees the ad, Some ads might naturally get more impressions, some might naturally get less, but it's all because it's at the user level. So that's really important to understand. The third part, it favors automation and Advantage Plus over manual control. So again, if you're in the minority like me and you know what you're doing, this probably is going to frustrate you and it will probably not work in the way you want it to as well. Where it will work is for someone that doesn't really know what they're doing on Meta, doesn't really want to go through training, doesn't want to get advice, they just want to get into Meta, and often they'll just jump on a call with a Meta rep. And the recommendation will be this: just run a campaign ad set, just drop your ads in and let Meta do their thing. They'll probably get that down to $50. You need a decent spend. And they'll just say, don't touch the ads, just let Meta optimize and let Meta optimize. You probably need to give it 7 to 10 days in order to see something. In that time, you're going to have to sit on your hands. Now, here's a massive problem for you. Now, I know some of you run ads for clients. I honestly don't think Andromeda is going to work for you. Now, imagine the scenario where you're working with a client's ad account and you've launched a campaign and ads and you've got 15 ads there and literally just do nothing for 5 days. How do you think your client's going to react to that? Yes, you can explain to your client, hey, this is Andromeda, this is how we run ads now. But just imagine going to a client and saying, we're just going to drop 15 ads in, we're going to spend $50 a day and just give it 10 days and just see what happens. If I was a client and I knew nothing about ads, I'm like, that doesn't sound right. Like, why would you not look at it daily and start making configuration stuff? Oh no, Meta said we just need to leave it and just let Meta do their thing. Client would probably look at that and say, I could do that myself. What's the point in hiring you? And here's the other problem. Thanks to AI, the easiest part of Meta ads, which is the creative, I'm going to argue, and the copy and stuff, clients can do that themselves. They don't need to be technical wizardries to figure out ad set targeting or campaigns and things like that. This part is getting easier. Meta have intentionally made these parts easier for people like that. So if you have clients, you're going to end up in a situation where your clients are going to be like, I can just run it myself. I can get AI to create my copy. I can get AI to create my videos and create my images. Why do I need an agency for? And that's going to be something that you're going to have to figure out, because if you are running Andromeda, I think that for a certain spend level, for clients doing it, for businesses doing it themselves, it might be a good start point if they can make it work. And that means they need enough budget, they need enough creative variety. To give you an example, one of the reasons why we are building into ad signals AI so much around ad creative is for this reason, because the differentiator for you is going to come down to these things: how you create your avatar, how you do your copywriting and your angles and creating your images and things like that. That's going to be your differentiator. So back in the day, and we talk about maybe 5 years ago, maybe even 2 3 years ago, a lot of the agencies and freelancers knew the technical side a lot better than clients ever did or ever will. Meta are trying to make that easier now, and especially with AI. I'll give you an example. Sometimes I need a tracking code, so like a pixel event code. I need a new code. Previously, I'd either go to Google and search for the actual code and make an edit, or I'd go to old code and copy and paste and maybe just change the event name. Now I just go to ChatGPT and say, hey, I need an add to cart event with a $97 price point. Give me the code. And it just does it in 3 seconds and it's there. I can do that. Business owners will start thinking like that as well. For example, okay, Meta told me one campaign, one ad set, guide me through what to do. AI will do that. In fact, our own ad signals, AI does that for you as well. So if clients are starting to use that, then the problem is, what purpose do I serve as an agency owner and a freelancer? The big thing is going to be on creative signals. Your differentiator is here. And I'd probably say 80% of your influence is going to be here, but there is still going to be an influence on the data, the pixel, the CAPI, and all that kind of stuff, which clients don't really care about, but is really important as well. And that's something you're going to have to push in as well. So we talked about automation. So Advantage Plus essentially gives Facebook a ton of control. Manual control is how you can actually test ads properly and things like that. Then the last point here is it rewards creative diversity and not micro targeting. So, for example, if you look at this in terms of, let's have a look down here. So, this campaign structure here, We have broad and narrow audience. This is how I run ads. So what I do here is I create an ad set here. So this is my ad set, and then I have it per avatar. So this is avatar number one, for example. This is avatar two. So one, two, and avatar three. So by defining a broad audience, narrow avatar, that basically allows me to create ads specifically for one avatar. This works and it will continue to work. This is the way I like to do it because when I'm talking to a specific avatar, let's say for example it's a supplement brand. Avatar 1 could be mums or moms, if you want to call it North American. This one could be athletes, and I'm not saying mums can't be athletes, but just being specific. This one could be bodybuilders. So three distinct avatars, and I could have defined those with a 5W avatar and created those. Now, if you imagine the ads here, all of my ads here are focused on mum. So, hey, it's tiring, you've got kids, you're low on energy, maybe low on iron, all my messages around that. Athletes, I'm talking about recovery times. I'm talking about extending your stamina and your lactic acid wastage and all that kind of stuff. Bodybuilders, I'm talking about protein and mass and things like that. So logically, this kind of split makes sense, right? We have three very distinct avatars. What Meta's telling you to do instead is instead have one broad ad set. So in this respect, like this could be, for example, female, I don't know, 21 to 50. This one could be male, female, I don't know, 25 to 40, whatever it is. What Meta's saying here is just do an ad set, male, female, 18 plus, for example. And that's it. That's it. You're done. And it might be country based, it might be location, whatever it is, but drop all your ads into here. So here, for example, I've got avatar one, I've got avatar two, I've got avatar three, got all these angles and hooks, and some of them are videos, some of them are static, some of them are UGC and all that kind of stuff. So Meta saying drop all of that into the ad set and let us figure it out. Can this work? It can because of Meta's model at the individual level. And here lays another problem. Imagine going to a client and saying, hey, we've got these three avatars. We identified moms, athletes, and bodybuilders. Just going to drop them all into one ad set and just let Meta figure it out. Again, it's going to be a hard thing to explain. Some customers don't care, and or clients don't care, and that's fine. But also, when you're running these ads, for me, it is stressful because I'm looking at this and saying, male, female, 18 plus. I've got this group here, which are I'll do the North American spelling. So my kids do it now. We've got these mums, we've got these athletes, and we've got these bodybuilders. What happens if the male starts to see the mums campaign? Now, in theory, they shouldn't because Meta knows who are going to respond to the mums, the athletes, and things like that. But that's the thing that I find difficult to get my head around is I don't trust Meta. I don't know if you followed me for any amount of time, you probably know that when Meta come up with products and ideas like this, I'm always skeptical. Until I've made it work consistently and with significant spend, I'm skeptical. This is why I will personally continue to run this. However, what I will start to do is to drop more ads into the mix. So where previously I've said run a minimum of 3 ads, now it might be a case of running a minimum of 6, running a minimum of 10, but I would still recommend that those ad sets are split by logic. So logic for me here is my avatar. Logic for you could be different audiences, for example. So one might be a lookalike of, let's say you're in finance. So one could be a lookalike of people that have bought insurance. One could be a lookalike of people that have invested. Yes, it could be the same person, but maybe you want to target them differently. So if you have a logical way of splitting, then this kind of model for me would make most sense. If you want to trust Meta and give it a go, and you're free to do, I'm not going to say you don't do that, then this is the model that they want you to move to. You could, for example, split it into 2 ad sets. One is male, one is female, if you're really worried about that, but you're not supposed to layer on too much more targeting than that. For example, when I start running my test ads, I always do Instagram and Facebook newsfeed. Until I've proven that these ads are working, then I'll do all placements. Whereas here, You're just meant to start off with all placements, broad, no targeting. In fact, no exclusion as well. This is the other thing that they're trying to push you towards is when we talk about the setup. So the way I run my setup, and some of you will know this, and I'll cover it off on this side, is we set up the funnel in this kind of format. We have our cold audience, we have our warm, we have our hot, and then we have our customers at the bottom. And the idea is someone who's at the cold level hasn't interacted with you at all, no clicks, no engagement, anything like that. People at the warm level have engaged, people at the hot level have clicked, and then you have customers at the bottom. And then therefore my campaign structure is set up in that way. So I have a campaign for each of these levels, and it means I can communicate with them in the way that they need at that moment in time. And we have ad sets here, and then we have our ads. So this is the way I still run my campaigns. But what Meta would want you to do is instead do it this way. So you have your cold, warm, hot, and customers, and you have one campaign. Like that's it. And then within that, you might have one or two ad sets. That doesn't even look like an S. And then you have your ads below that. It's all in terms of simplification. Now, if you've seen Advantage Plus campaigns, you can actually split these out by new and returning customers. So you can set up audiences that define who is a new prospect and who's a returning customer. And then you're supposed to let Meta decide on which ad to serve which person. And in the ad set, you drop your new and your repeat customers in there, not to exclude and not to target, but purely to identify. So when an ad gets served, Meta decides who's going to see what. One ad gets to warm, one ad gets to an existing customer, but Meta makes that decision. I'm not entirely comfortable with that because, and on one side, the argument is if there's less data, then we can't split the data as well as we want. And certainly for small businesses that are just starting out, if you're a brand new business and let's say you're spending $50 a day, you've only got cold to focus on. There's no engagement, there's no clicks and stuff. So you literally just started, but very quickly, day 10, for example, now you're starting to get a lot more people engaging and clicking. At this point, especially once I get thousands, if not tens of thousands hitting my warm and thousands into hot, I want to serve them, control my ad spend to them, and I want to control my messaging to them. So this comes back to this point of Andromeda supports automation over manual control. I still would prefer the manual control. That's because I like to see exactly what my numbers are, and I want to manage my budget effectively based on performance. Now, you could say, I don't care about that. I just want one campaign, and if my ROAS is good, I don't care. But herein lays a problem. So let's say, for example, you've got a 3x ROAS here, and you're super happy and things are great. And in the old campaign structure, maybe it was a 2.5x ROAS. And you look at that and say, clearly the Andromeda is working better. I recently had this problem or this situation with a particular client, and actually they had external tracking in place. So we could actually see exactly what was happening with Meta. And when we looked at this, the 3x ROAS, I think it was something like 80% of the business that came through was returning customers and 20% was new. Now, guess what happens to a business over time when you are not replenishing your new customers? This one was an e-commerce store. Their average order value, I think, was about $150. So it was a slightly considered purchase. Now, the reason they reached out to me earlier this year was because their new customer rate was dropping. When you looked at their new customer graph, it was like that, and then it was in decline. But performance was good, and they were kind of like, we can't figure this out. What's happening? This is what's happening. Meta, even if you set this up, it won't always respect it, and it won't always recognize it as well. So, for example, it was a Shopify store, and we uploaded custom audiences and all that kind of stuff. It can't always match it, first of all. But even then, it will try and focus on performance. And it will, in this case, it tried to focus on return on ad spend, and it was getting a good return on ad spend, but we weren't getting enough new customers through. So in this kind of model, going back to this, we flipped it, and it was something like, I think we got it to 40% and 60%. So we started to improve that, and the goal would be to then flip that around. So we're getting a lot more new customers. ROAS started to drop because those new customers were actually more expensive, whereas they were trained to think the ROAS was cheap, but it was because they kept on going after repeat customers. Repeat customers, they know you, they like you, they trust you. This was a product that people bought every 3 to 6 months. So they would have probably bought anyway, and we were spending money regardless. So this becomes a more complex problem. The more the complex, the more the established the business is as well. So it's not a simple case of just let Meta get on with it. Meta don't have full access to everything else that's going on. And to give you an example, this particular client was also running Google Ads. Meta had no visibility of what was happening on Google Ads. On Google, I think it was like 90% new and then 10% of returning. And the crazy part of this is a lot of the traffic that Google was driving was going into Meta as click data and then converting on Meta. So again, when we start to look at even the 20% of new that came through, the majority of the top of the funnel came from Google. If you eliminated Google, then a lot of this traffic would be taken out as well. So what ends up happening is Meta gets lazy. So in this instance, it was focusing number one on conversions happening from existing customers, number two, conversions from hot, number three, from warm, and it wasn't even considering cold audiences. So essentially, while they were trying to grow their business through Meta, all they were doing was piggybacking off Google and existing customers. And Meta was quite happy with itself, saying, hey, you've got great performance. But in reality, it was not growing the business. So this is maybe an edge case to you, but this is a regular occurrence for me where I'm working with larger clients, and it the Andromeda just isn't built for that. So Andromeda's priority, coming back to what you need to consider for Andromeda, number one is creative diversity. So this should be a given, and I think probably everything you've read about Andromeda has talked about creative diversity. I'll break a bit of that down shortly as well. The second priority is the messaging. Now, I'll explain two parts of this shortly, but the messaging is essentially your offer. So the copy, the call to action, and things like that. Then the third part is the funnel. So this is the landing page, and then what you get to do, what you get them to do from the funnel. And then the fourth part is targeting. This isn't important for Andromeda. If you don't do much with the targeting, I think Andromeda will generally do a good job. And I think this is why I still rely on broad audiences more than anything. And then I fall back to interests because the targeting is a lot better in that way as well. This also relates to how I've been running ads for the longest time. And what I've been telling people are the most important four things that you need to worry about when it comes to Facebook ads. Number one is your product or service and how much of a market fit you've got. So, for example, if you have a brand, I had a call yesterday actually. There's a lady that runs software for people selling houses, so realtors and things like that. And it's a new piece of software, nothing else like it in the market and things like that. And she was like, I want to run ads and I don't know where to start. And I said, are people buying? Do you have customers in that? She goes, I've got a few, but I'm not sure like what things, what features the products they're interested in and things like that. If you don't have product market fit, which means you know exactly who your audience is, what offer works, and what funnel works, if you don't have these four things, Meta's going to get expensive, but you need to spend in order to learn. So for her, it was like, okay, let's run some ads, low spend, and start testing to see what the market reacts to. So she's got 5 USPs, unique selling points. Let's go and test those out with a broad audience, run a bunch of ads and just see what the data tells us. What ads are getting clicks, what ads are, once they've visited the landing page, what they're doing on the landing page, install Microsoft Clarity, start to see how people are using it. And she had a tech person on the call, and I said, don't worry about the funnel and conversion rates and making it so cool. Just get the clicks and see what the people are doing. That's like the one most important thing. This also comes down to how well known your product is. So if you're selling phone cases on Meta, you don't really need a product market fit. People are always looking for phone cases. So you don't need to start running speculative ads. Would someone be interested in a phone case? And you can use Google Trends which is for looking at search data, to double check that. But I can tell you people search for that product all the time. So the product market fit is there. Then you look at audience and say, okay, who would buy my product or who would take up my service? So in the case of the Realtor software, she's after consumers. So people are looking to move house. Okay, so what type of people move house? You've got first time buyers, you've got second time buyers, you've got investors that are buying to let, you've got and breakdowns of families, singles, couples, elderly. Like when we started to break down their audiences, a number of different avatars. And then from there, you say, what's my prime or what's my first three avatars I care most about? Then you can work on the offer. And the offer is the bridge between the product and the audience. That's all it is. It's not discount, promotion, all those things. It's like, how do I convince these group of people to buy this thing or to take up this service? And then the funnel is, where do I send them to in order to convert them into some kind of action? So for them, it was like a trial or whatever it was of the software. They're the four most important things to think about when you run Facebook ads. So if you're looking at Andromeda and saying, will this model work? How do I need to set up my structure and things like that? First of all, get your product or service market fit. Secondly, you must define your avatars. And this is why we, like, literally the first thing that we developed in this app was the avatar builder, because this is the single most important part of getting your ads working effectively. Knowing, having an idea of who your audience is and what the offer is, and then just creating that avatar from there, because that's essentially what's going to help you to build every part of your targeting. So target audience, let's say for the real estate app, first time buyers. So people looking to buy their house for the first time, don't have too much experience and need some guidance and advice. What's the offer? Download this app. It will take you through it step by step, seamless, take away your stress, all that kind of stuff. Create the avatar from there. Once you've got the avatar, then you can start thinking about the messaging. So what kind of angles do I have? What kind of hooks do I have? So an angle is, for example, for a first time home buyer, don't get caught up in all the jargon. Here's how to simplify. Or it could be, as a first time home buyer, if you're worried about mortgages and all the complexity, then here's how to simplify it. And here's how our app helps. So the angle is all to do with the different reasons why someone would be interested in your product or service. And then the hooks are just playing on that. So, for example, we talked about for this one using humor. So for example, we have another client that started to use those guerrilla AI ads running away in the forest and talking about their products and things like that. Something which is going to cut through the newsfeed. So that's your hook. And then the format, static video, is it UGC? Is it whatever kind of style it is that you've broken down? That becomes so much more important than your structure and how you're setting up your ads. But the variety is what matters. And it's the variety that's going to allow you to make ads work, whether it's Andromeda set up in terms of campaign or just Andromeda working at your ad set levels. Because the thing is, this isn't something you switch on and off. There's no toggle that says use Andromeda or don't use Andromeda. There's using Andromeda as Meta wants you to use it. Then there's using Andromeda in a way that's going to work for you. The way that works for me is this campaign structure here, which is avatar based ad sets and then avatar based ads. So that's still using the Andromeda setup, except rather than running 2 or 3 ads live, I want to be running 6, maybe even 10 ads in the ad set. I wouldn't have done this a year ago or 2 years ago because I want my ads to be served, and I talk about the spend, the budget to ad ratio and things like that. But the way Meta's working right now is it wants more ads and it wants ad variety. So angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, hook 1, hook 2, hook 3, different ad formats, different ad styles. And those ad styles are all related to the type of ads you can deliver. So when we talk about angles and hooks, this is the kind of construct. So if I go back to here on the left-hand side, so this is how we run it in the BPM method. So I think those of you in ad signals should know this. If not, then you'll get to know. So we create our multiple avatars, and I've just shown you 3 example avatars of the mom, the athlete, and the bodybuilder. You go through that process inside of the 5W avatar creator inside of Ad Signals AI. Once you've created those avatars, then you have an idea of where people are in terms of their needs and desires and outcomes. Now, every type of ad I run, I break it down into either a painkiller or a supplement. In fact, let's color code that because a supplement is forward facing and positive. A painkiller is immediate, short term, and you need to get it fixed straight away. So, for example, if you have a killer headache right now, and I have a supplement that in 90 days can transform migraines, that's a disconnect because you're not interested in a 90-day transformation. You need pain relief right now. If I run an ad that says we can give you instant pain relief, and let's say, for example, it's we can deliver to your house in 3 hours, then that's a painkiller. Or you say drop into store and just pick it up and here's a discount. That's literally a painkiller because you've got a killer headache. We're delivering you some medication. It's going to get rid of it instantly. Then great, it's a painkiller. Now let's flip that and say you're a chronic sufferer of migraine, like I am. If there's an ad that says, if you're a chronic sufferer of migraine, this program will transform your migraines in the next 30 to 40 days, then I'm more likely to take that because I want a positive long term outcome. And I'm more likely to invest in something that is going to give me a more future result than a more immediate result. If I see an ad that says, here's an instant fix for your headache, but it's like a short term, like 24 hours, it lasts 24 hours. I'm not interested in that. I want a supplement. I want something that's going to be future facing. So generally every single ad that you create will come down to this. Am I solving something immediately right now, or am I solving something that's a future facing problem? Like for example, Kat, you asked about some campaign for a club or some event and things like that. And you might look at this and say, is that a painkiller or a supplement? It could be both. A painkiller is I need to figure out what to do with myself and my partner for New Year's Eve. We want to go out somewhere. I don't know what to do. But actually, it could be a supplement because it's not just solving an immediate problem, it's actually future facing and saying in 2 months' time or whenever, 4 weeks' time, I want to do something and I want to do something cool and I want some ideas. And here's a supplement for that. So you're planning your product and your messaging around that. The second part is, and this is actually a big part of creating the avatar. So when you go through this process of creating the 5W avatar, a big part of what we do in the background is work with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So this is developed 60, 70, maybe even 100 years ago now, I can't remember. But essentially what this does is it breaks down the human development process into 5 steps. Now, whether you agree it's 5 steps, some people put Wi-Fi at the bottom as a basic human need. You can decide that for yourself. But these are basically what people need to survive and then to thrive. So, in order to survive, you need food, water, sleep. You need safety, security, and resources. So they're the base layers. So for any human to be satisfied, happy, you need those two. Then, in order to thrive, you need a sense of belonging, you need self esteem, and you need self actualization. So, this, for example, is where people start to think about others and they give charity or they want to become an entrepreneur and all those kind of things. So, there's different levels to this. Now, when you pitch your product or your service, it will play on different parts of this as well. Now, let's say, for example, you're selling water. Water is a very basic need. You don't need to explain anything about water. Literally, every human on earth knows what water is and why it's important. So, if you're selling water, it's easy to explain what it is, very hard to sell because water's free for a lot of people. You can get it out the tap, or it's very cheap. You can get it from the supermarket. Now, if you look at it and say, actually, our water's special because it's got electrolytes, it's built for sports, it's all these kind of things. Think about Red Bull. Red Bull is water with wings, with all these bad additives and sugars and things like that. They're not targeting your basic needs, they're targeting this self actualization, the higher purpose, the impact, the creativity. That's why Red Bull are always doing those daring things like jumping off a weather balloon or hot air balloon, whatever it was, at the edge of space. Or I saw a video a few weeks ago of someone skateboarding down the side of a massive building. Or you see those homemade or garage made flying devices and they fly off into the water. They're targeting people based on wanting to do more in life. So if the ad was, hey, you need to drink and you need to survive, and here's a drink that can help you survive, or whatever it was, they would have worked through all these layers and found their space, which is you want to do something different, something with adrenaline. You want to have a big impact. You want memories. You want whatever it is. You want to be cool with your friends. That's the advertising that they put in. So what I found with advertising is every ad, every offer falls into some part of this as well. And I'm pretty sure if you look at your ads, you'll be able to break them down into this as well. Then that's how we create the different angles. So once we have those angles, and again, the AI app we have helps with that, then you have your various hooks within that. So for every one angle, you have multiple hooks. And then for every hook, you have multiple formats. And then for every format, you have multiple ads. So you can see very quickly, you can create a number of ads for any campaign very fast. And that's something which fortunately we've been able to do a lot more now that we've got our own AI, and you can use ChatGPT and things like that. And you can argue some of this, not all of it, can be done through ChatGPT. We're just making that whole process faster and easier using our frameworks. Now, when you look at this and say, okay, I can create many ads, what kind of ads should I be creating? I'm glad you asked. There are many different ads you can create, and these are just a list of a few things that we put together. Identity based. Why is my pen so large? Identity based. So, for example, if you are, where's my, so identity based is looking at you as a person. So, for example, if I'm advertising to business owners, I can look at them and say, hey, you're in this position right now. Here's where you want to be, and here's how we're going to help. So, that's identity based ads there. Then you've got problem first ads. So, these ones are you're talking about you're trying to get the person into the mindset of the kind of hole that they're in right now. Then you've got desire and outcome ads. These are less about where you are right now, they're about where you can be. So, for example, if you see a lot of the kind of bro marketers and Instagram and things like that, they have the fast cars, they have the holidays, they have the lifestyle and things like that. That's desire and outcome based. Then you have demonstration or demo ads. So you'll see ads where they're like, in fact, I've started to do that for the Ad Signals AI app, which is the ad actually just showing you how to create an ad avatar. And be like, in the next 60 seconds, I'm going to create an avatar and create some ads, and I'm going to upload those into Meta. So, like that as a hook is pretty good. And then I can go demonstrate how to do that in 60 seconds with a call to action that says, hey, by the way, you can get access to this app as well. Then you've got story ads. These could be talking about you as a founder, talking about your customer, where they were, all those kind of things, testimonial and social proof. And then you've got, and I think that's kind of obvious, offer forward ads. So these are, here's a promotion, objection killer ads. These are often bottom of the funnel, but you've got this thing that you're concerned about. Here's why it's not a problem. Competitor category contrast. So you can start throwing rocks at the enemies. And then you've got all the different format variations. So UGC, founder, green screen, carousel. So when we talk about ad variation, and we're talking about formats, and we're talking about different types of ads that we can run, I talk about having an infinite set of ideas. I don't run out of ideas anymore, especially now that we've got our own AI app. Once that avatar is created, it's very easy to create multiple variants of that. And this is where the Rubik's Cube creative concept comes from, which is in our kind of old way of thinking, we would try and line up our creative like this cube on the right. So the idea is let's get all of the similar ads together into different ad sets. So if you imagine these are ad set 1, ad set 2, that's not very good, ad set 2 and 3, and you might group ads together. What Meta's saying is don't do it like that, but actually do it in this way. So where you're actually splitting your ad sets, make sure that every ad set has a big variety of ads in it. So don't group them all together. And also what Meta's saying is the more similar the ads, the more chance that it will not get served. And it's because of this. You'll probably end up coming across this if you haven't already. When ads are put into the mix here, now let's say, for example, we've got 1, 2. So even if we just use the colors here, right? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 similar colors. Now let's say those are ads. Meta would look at this and say, there's 7 very similar ads. We're going to eliminate this. We're going to eliminate that. And we'll leave these 2 running. This is also similar to, that's also similar. That's also similar. So it might end up running 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ads. even though you drop 15 in there, 8, for example, are now taken away because they're too similar. Because the way Facebook's looking at it is if we've got a limited chance of delivery, if all your ads are very similar, then we're going to have to pick and choose because the predictive model says which ones should we actually enter into the auction. So the more variety, the better. In this kind of example, let's say you've got one ad here, which is, that's supersized. Let's just say that this ad here is ad A, this is ad B, and you've got a split test going on. And the only difference is the color in the background. Whether Facebook sees that as enough of a change or not, I'm not entirely sure. Now, let's say, for example, the split is actually exactly the same copy, but one is image, one is video. That is definitely enough of a variation for Facebook to try and serve both. Let's just say ad C and ad D, exactly the same image, but different copy. Is that enough for them to get equal servings? It may or may not. So this is what you need to be thinking about in terms of Rubik's Cube and how you're actually setting up your creative to make sure that you're getting the delivery that you need for your ads as well. So if we go back to our list here, so how do you actually create an edge in what you're doing? The biggest part of this right now for you as an advertiser is your creative strategy is everything. Previously, you could make a claim for being really good on the platform and stuff like that. And I'd argue the BPM method has been trying to get this across to the market since we launched it publicly in 2018, that the creative strategy is everything. So brand driven performance marketing, that actually means that brand comes first. Brand is your avatar, customer research, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, everything that goes into the avatar, and then how you actually put that into your creative plan. So brand driven performance marketing says, okay, we are performance marketers. We put money in, we look at metrics and we make decisions. But what's more important than that is actually the brand part. So if 2018 it fell on deaf ears because you could make ads work easier, in 2025, in 26 and 27, brand and everything that brand stands for has just been amplified. And I think Andromeda has just forced that onto everyone as well. Structured creative pipelines outperform random tests. So again, going back to this kind of model, what I do here and looking at my setup here, I test these based on avatar as well. So the way I run it is I have a separate test campaign, and then within that, I run different ad sets. And then within the ad sets, I then run my ads for testing. Now, the reason I test this before I put it into the main account and I make sure every ad gets impressions is because I want to be able to make the decision, not Meta. I don't trust the algorithm. If I go back to this example and I say Meta's going to automatically exclude some of your ads, you could get 15 ads together and you've poured sweat and guts and everything just to get those live, or whatever it is, or maybe you paid a lot of money, maybe you took a lot of time. If Meta comes back and says 7 of these ads that you created, 50%, 60% of your ads, they're never going to get served. That's a bit poor, I think. Like that's a poor experience. I know why Meta's doing it, and for basic advertisers, it's fine. But for us, we know what we're doing. I don't want that. I want to make sure that every ad I put into the auction has been validated with data. So that means 100% of the ads, not 50%, have had traffic, and I can decide whether they work or not. If you want Meta to decide that for you, that's fine. But if I'm spending the time and money in creating the videos and the images and putting the copy together and launching them, I want to make sure they get served. And this is why I use the graduation testing method. Graduation testing method is and will still be valid going forward. Graduation testing, there are 4 things that we focus on. So number 1 is you have to start off with an audience. In most cases, I generally always start with broad, and then I always start with interest. Let's put and prop an ent. Because when I don't have any data, I don't have custom audiences, I can't do lookalikes. So the very first thing is broad interest. And that's why within the AdSignal's AI app, that's exactly the way we set up our avatars here as well. So the way it works, and I'll kind of load up an example, is We always have a broad audience that's recommended, and then we do some searches within Meta to find interests that could potentially work. And then you can decide if you want to save those and use those for your campaigns. But essentially, that's the starting point. Now, once you get more data, then you can decide, do I want interest or not? Do I then want to introduce lookalikes and maybe behavioral, so lookalike audience or behavioral targeting? So we always have to start somewhere. So we start with the audiences and serve the same ads in all of them, validate the audiences. Then once we find audiences that works, then we start working on different angles. When we found angles that work, we start to test different formats. Once we found all of that's working, then we start testing landing pages and funnels and things like that. So the graduation testing process still applies through this whole change that Andromeda is bringing. And I think this will give you a massive advantage, especially not just if you're running ads for yourself, but if you're running ads for clients, to be able to report back that you know exactly what's working, where and why, versus another agency that just says, oh, just launch 15 ads. Not sure why 7 didn't get served, but 8 did, and they seem okay. I just cannot foresee that being an okay conversation with the client. And then the third part is with more angles, you have more avatars and more formats equals more shots on goal. So it's like the first base versus home run idea. So in baseball, everyone wants a home run, which is you hit the ball as hard as you can and it goes out of bounds. It can't be caught. You just casually walk around first base, second base, third base, fourth base, and you've got your team a point. Super easy. In the ads world, wouldn't it be incredible if every ad we created was a home run? Every ad had the best CPA, best ROAS, best profit, all that kind of stuff. In reality, it doesn't happen. But in baseball, there is also a strategy that just says get to first base. Because if you get to first base, you can also get to second base and to third and fourth and still get your team a point. One's slower, one's faster, one takes a bit more time, one is super quick. Both of them work. So any successful baseball team have the strategy of having both. Try for the home run. If you can't get it, at least get to first base. So when we're creating our ads, the same principle applies. We want those home run ads, but it doesn't mean that we put all of our effort into trying to create the absolute best ad we can. We also test variants of those ads as well to just see if we can create some first bases, some ads that show potential, and maybe you can tweak and get better and better. So the third part of this is when you're thinking about the system that you're using, and whether you're working with me in the BPM method or you have your own process or you're following someone else's, AI and automation are a huge part of what you need to be using right now because it's all about speed and efficiency. I cannot foresee anyone like right now, you should be using AI and automation. If you're not, you should absolutely be using it. If you're not using it in the next 12 months, you're absolutely going to get crushed by competitors and everything like that. So, at the very least, you should be leaning on the machines to take away a lot of the thinking and the doing so that you can actually focus more on the creative side. Systemized testing beats guesswork. So, like, you could argue that the why can't I do a straight line? Systemized testing beats guesswork. To an extent, this is guesswork. So when your ads enter this part of the, I guess, the ads algorithm, I know there's machine learning and clever AI stuff that goes on, and it will end up figure out which ads to serve, which ads get eliminated, and things like that. And we could look at this and say it's a super clever AI system, and Meta knows more than I do, and I'm going to rely on it, and things are going to be great. There's an element of guesswork still because Meta, as much as they can as much as they can claim that they have really clever systems and stuff like that, nothing is guaranteed. And the single reason why is humans are not predictable. We are not machines. We don't follow the same process and routines every single day. Just because I click today at 10 a.m. doesn't mean I'm going to click tomorrow at 10 a.m. You cannot predict that. There are many things that happen in my life. For example, my son had a smashed windscreen today, 30 minutes, an hour before this workshop. I had to actually go and drive out and go and check in on him. Now, fortunately, I didn't have to cancel this, and he was also okay. But they're the unpredictable things that happen in a human's life. AI is not aware of that. Now, maybe in 10 years, when AI's got eyes everywhere, it can see, oh, he's popped out of his house, and so he's not going to click his thing right now. So that's a completely different and scary world. And maybe in some point, AI will know exactly what you're doing in your day, and it can improve the predictability of you doing stuff. but right now it cannot do that. So because of that, I would argue it's still an element of guesswork. So systemizing your testing using graduation testing method gives you a better advantage than guesswork. The stability algorithm has changed. Now, I'm gonna tell you this is a fact right now, and either you've discovered it yourself or you're going to. Creating a stable ad account is the hardest thing to do right now. And I'm not here to say I'm like the wizard of it and you should do what I do and things are stable. Even I struggle at times to get proper stability. And there are so many factors behind it. One of them is this whole change in how the algorithm works. It's naturally designed to cause instability because of what's happening. So, for example, if we took this out, so let's say we got rid of this and we got rid of this and we got rid of this, we still have some computational power that kind of went on with creating meta ads, but it was a much simpler, it was complex, but compared to what it is now, it was a much simpler process to serve ads. Now, the way it works right now, I'm just going to undo this because I don't want scribbles necessarily on there. The way this works is this whole thing here creates unpredictability because it's based on AI models that are constantly learning, constantly shifting, and constantly changing things, which means learning limited could fluctuate, which means results could fluctuate, which means, for example, if results are really good on a given day and then the next day they drop, you don't actually know why. Is it because the competition changed, something happened with the users, or maybe the Andromeda algorithm slightly changed? That will naturally create a lot more instability. So you have to be on top of this. And this is why Meta will argue you need to just let it iron out. So if one day's bad, just don't touch the ads and let it do what it wants. I'm sorry, I can't do that. I am responsible for, let's say, hundreds of thousands of ad spends for a client. I cannot sit there and say, I'm going to sit back. The client might message me on Slack and say, results look really bad yesterday. I'm like, Meta said, leave it alone. Get back to us next week. We'll let you know how it goes. No, a client's not going to accept that. Even if I'm running my own ads from my own offers, I still won't accept that. I don't trust the AI. I don't trust the automation. I trust my own eyes and my own judgment. And that also, again, leads down to learning phase instability as well. So learning phase, in order to get out, you need enough clicks, enough conversions, enough impressions, things like that. But because of the algorithm constantly changing, I think that the learning phase will kind of lose part of its, I'm not going to even say value because I don't even know how valuable it is, but it's kind of intent. So I think that's another thing to keep a close eye on as well. And then where do we go with this? So with all the things that we've discussed, first thing is the AC4 aligns with the new creative led world. So AC4 is this idea of getting the product, the audience, and the offer and the funnel all lined up for wherever you are with your ads. So if you're already spending, let's say, 1,000 a day, you want to get to 2,000 a day, you've got to validate product, audience, offer, funnel. Where do I tweak next? Versus someone who's absolutely starting off, which is right, how do I get product market fit? How do I do my research? So there's different parts of that as well. The 5W avatar generates the diversity Andromeda needs. So when you run the avatar project process, so let's just have a look at one from here, for example. So let's pull up, in fact, let's just find our avatars here. So, for example, we have our who, we have our pain point, emotional motivation, objections, Maslow's hierarchy level, problem awareness, or kind of where they are on the kind of 5 different levels of awareness, who they really are at their core, their motivators. All of this is broken down into what makes up their avatar. And the way we've programmed it into the AI is when you create copy and creative ideas from that, in the background, it's pulling out different elements and you've got different variables that you can attach to it as well. So, for example, when you want to create different hooks, angles, formats, to an extent, it should be a kind of never ending list of ads that you can create from that one avatar. And you should have multiple as well. So, running out of ad ideas should not be a problem anymore, especially with the AI and the automation in the background. Hopefully, if you're using Ad Signals AI. And this is one of the biggest differentiators between you running ads for a client and the client doing it themselves. They just won't have the concept to create this kind of content. The 4 funnel system handles the broad traffic meta sends. So I showed you, for example, how we run our ads using this system at the top, cold, warm, hot, and customers, and how Andromeda wants you to run your ads. That's a decision for you to make. I run my ads like this, and I will continue to do so until such point that Andromeda works a lot better. But right now, it cannot, like you lose the ability to do budget changes, ad changes, and things like that based on the funnel level, which, as I explained, if you have other means of traffic, if you're tracking new versus repeat and things like that, which a good performance marketer should be doing, then that's going to be harder to do on Andromeda as well. Offer clarity is more important than the audience precision. So I think I've explained this, but just to reiterate, when it comes to your targeting, you need to be thinking about what am I actually targeting against? Like I've talked about doing broad audiences and running interests. Generally, most of my campaigns are like that. I do run and test lookalikes, and if they work, great. But more often than not, I'd probably say most of the ad accounts, broad generally works better. And I'm going to explain one of the techniques to get that working as well. And then the creative sandbox is no longer a nice to have. So essentially, create the testing that we do with the graduation testing process, it creates a sandbox of ads for us. So this test campaign becomes our sandbox. And the idea of a sandbox is this is where we test and this is where we learn. Oops, don't need that curve there. So this is our sandbox here. So this allows us to continue to test and learn outside of Meta's algorithm, and then we can push it in. So that means, for example, by the time our ads have been graduation tested, so here we are over here doing our ad testing, and we are putting ads into the ads corpus, as they call it. Our ads are pre-tested versus others that are just pushing ads in non-tested. So we have an idea of what works and what doesn't, and that pre-testing sticks at the ad level. So when we copy from our sandbox into the main campaign, data is already attached to the ad as well. So that allows us to continue to keep an advantage over our competitors as well. The final part of this is how the BPM method supports Andromeda. So number one is pixel signals. At the start, I said 20% of the effort is going to be up from going into pixel, 80% creative. But the way you do your testing and the way you set up your campaign structure, the advertising core four, the four funnel system, cold, warm, hot, you'll actually give better data as long as you set up in the right way than a general Andromeda setup. The second part of this is on-site SEO. Now, in order to make your broad audiences work, there are a number of things to think about. So if I break this down into a section here. So when you have a broad audience, what does Facebook know? Let's use green because red looks like a bad thing. So when you have a broad audience, what does Facebook already know? So it knows something about the user based on the pixel data because people are browsing various websites. They have the pixel, and that pixel goes back to their user profile. It also has your ad. It also has your landing page, and it also has your conversions. So what it ends up doing is your pixel is collecting data from the traffic and hits and things like that. It's also being enriched from other people that it finds similar. It also reads the copy and the images and the videos that you're presenting in your ad as well. So when you run a video, Meta's looking at the transcript, and it takes the video, it takes static images and starts to make sense of that. For static images, it can read what the image is about. So for example, if you're selling footwear, for example, and the image is of someone who's walking and the shoe is on show, and in the text it says, if you're looking for trendy footwear for the summer, whatever it is. So Meta's looking at that as well. And then your landing page. So your landing page will also have copy on it, and your copy should also reflect the thing that you're selling. So if your landing page says premium footwear designed for summer for men, whatever it is, and it's got all the keywords in there, that's another positive. And then obviously your conversions as well, which says people that saw this footwear ad actually end up buying footwear. How does it know? Because they clicked this landing page, they added to cart, they went to convert, whatever the products or services. Like the conversion could be very specific. This all gets put back into your broad audience targeting. So The way to think about this, and if you're in ad signals, do a search for broad lookalikes, because this is the term I've given it. A broad lookalike is when Facebook takes all of this data and creates a lookalike of that in your broad audience. You can't see it and you can't create it yourself, but Meta does it. So broad, for example, I could be targeting male 25 plus in the US, and that's it. But what Meta's also doing is it's looking at men, it's looking at clothing, it's looking at footwear, it's looking at purchasers, people that purchase or show purchase intent, things like that. So it puts all of this together into its own targeting. So when it serves the ad, it's already found people that are more likely to click this. Now, I'll give you an example. I think some time ago we had a blockage in one of our drains. So I went to Google and did a search for local plumbers and things like that. I clicked into a few sites. And then I think about half an hour later, as I was on Facebook, I started to get ads for local plumbers. I didn't I didn't tell Facebook anything about the plumbing. Now you could argue, oh, they listen to you and things like that. But in this case, what it was doing was, because those plumbing websites I clicked through from Google had the Pixel installed, and because I was already logged in on my phone, it could see what I was doing, and therefore it started to serve me ads. And when I looked at why am I getting served this ad, you can click on the little icon in the top right. It just said you match similar people to this audience. Like, it wasn't you visit this site or you saw this page. It was just like I think I fell into 18 plus in Canada, and that was it. But it knew I was in market. That's a huge thing. If it knows my intent and it knows I'm in market, in the same way, if I go broad and someone's actually looking for shoes and I'm just generally targeting and I've got all this data, then Meta will know that, hey, this person's looking for shoes. Take a look at this shoe. This could be a good fit for you. So that's a big way how we make broad audiences work. And that's a huge thing about falling into Andromeda. So although I don't necessarily agree with the structure of the campaigns, which I guess Meta would want you to use, and simplification and things like that, I would still recommend for our kind of setup to do a logical based split. I'm not going to say avatar, because logic could be many things. Logic could be, for example, a particular category. So this could be electrical, could be homeware, could be clothing if you've got multiple store ecom, or it could be, as in my case, it could be people that I'm advertising for ad signals, for our coaching program for agencies, for our one-to-one consultant program, which is for seven-figure businesses. I would split those into 3 campaigns, even if they're all broad, because my avatar is very different. And then I'd have a mix of creatives in that as well, as opposed to having one ad set with all the ads in there, which you're going to have to trust Meta to deliver and deliver against, which I just absolutely don't. So that's the summary for, I think, the 90-minute summary or thereabouts of not just what Meta Andromeda is, but how you should be using and thinking about Andromeda as well. And don't be caught up in the technical details. Don't be caught up in the fear that it's going to absolutely trash your campaigns if you don't switch Andromeda on in your head. There is no switch for Andromeda yet in Ads Manager. There are switches to be aware of in terms of AI and automation and things that Meta trying to force on you, which I don't recommend generally you turn on unless you test and they work for you. But other than that, the key takeaways are: number 1 is creative is everything. Number 2, creative diversity is the most important part of the creative. Number 3, campaign structure is a decision you're going to have to make as to how you decide on structuring. Number 4 is then how you decide to funnel those users. Do you put them all through, group everyone up? Do you split them out? And there are some cases, like, for example, local targeting, where I do group because the audiences are too small. And then thinking about how much trust you put into the Andromeda program versus how much you actually put into thinking about advertising. And then the final part is, I honestly, like, I developed the BPM method. I launched it in 2018 based on developing it from 2014. It's now more than ever important to have a proper structure into how you run ads. You could get away with it in 2018, 19, 20 without too much structure, just throwing things at the wall and seeing what would stick. And then 2021, iOS came along and it changed the game. Then people started to take avatars and creative more seriously. Now it's not just take it more seriously, it's do or die. You can't run a successful meta ads campaign without having proper creative strategy in place. And that's literally just this block here. This is where you're going to have to focus a lot of your time and energy into creating those avatars, building those avatars around the needs of your prospects, and then building your ad campaigns, thinking about the different creative hooks, the variants, and things like that, and then building a multiple Rubik's Cube creative strategy that's going to work for your ad campaign, for your prospects, and give Andromeda everything that it needs as well.